what is happening in the world right now. Will we destroy ourselves as a human species, or will we, after all, make a quantum leap? Right now, many people are concerned about the situation in the world because various local and larger scale wars are flaring up all over the globe. Every day, we constantly see news in the global public space about new wars breaking out here and there. So, what is actually happening and what should we expect? Will there be a threat of nuclear apocalypse for the entire planet, or will everything somehow work out? Let's figure this out together today. Today, we will have a broadcast together with the Galactic Federation of Light. I invited them in advance and they are already present here. They will be ready to answer your questions. But before we start directly asking questions to the higher civilizations, I want to clarify right away that my channel is not a political channel. My goal is not to analyze political events or to judge the actions of any politicians or countries. My task is generally to consider the situation on a planetary scale and to study it from an energetic perspective, as well as to convey to you the information transmitted by the higher civilizations of light led by the Galactic Federation. Today, through contact with them, we will clarify the overall situation and also find out what possible paths exist for us and how we personally can influence this situation. At the end of this broadcast, we will do a short planetary meditation in order to raise the vibrations of Earth's space and perhaps influence the outcome of the future. Before we move directly to communicating with the Galactic Federation, I want to say that each of you sends out your own specific vibrations into the quantum field of the surrounding space and leaves your mark. That's why when you think about something, when you study some information or believe in something specific, it directly affects the collective reality and brings about changes in the collective field of the planet. And it generates changes that influence everyone. Right now, a lot of people on the internet, on YouTube, are doing all sorts of interviews, making predictions and sharing stories. Lately, this has especially turned into a trend of spreading scary stories. I've noticed that people are being frightened a lot, and personally, I feel an overall decrease in the level of awareness. Some time ago, the higher forces of light told us that the year 25 would be a turning point in the development of our civilization, and that in this year there is a very high probability of such powerful energies coming to Earth that they could stimulate a quantum leap for humanity. But for this to happen, a certain condition must be met. There must be at least a period of time without wars on the planet. For a favorable outcome of the quantum transition, but this energetic flare on the sun may also occur, and regardless of everything, sometime in the summer it will still reach the Earth. What are the chances that this time this year we will actually be able to make the transition? Today we will try to figure it out and understand what it depends on. Each of you, in one way or another, whether you've watched me or not, also studies other sources of information besides all this. I am well aware of that. And what I say is not the ultimate truth. First and foremost, listen to yourself and ask yourself what personally resonates and responds within you. Because in today's environment where there are so many sources of information, many play on people's fears, many use intimidation because it's a very powerful energy. One way or another, today's headline might have seemed frightening to you as well. But perhaps now we'll be able to answer questions related to this topic in more depth. First of all, let's clarify the events a little. Right now, you may have noticed the renewed escalation of the long-standing conflict between Pakistan and India, and perhaps in our time this is a unique case. It's unique because these are two countries that possess nuclear weapons and purely theoretically they could use them against each other. And of course, we understand that nuclear weapons are a terrifying force. And when it comes to the use of such weapons, the threat is not limited to just a local region, but also includes in general the contamination of surrounding areas with radiation. And many people are very afraid and concerned about this, and of course, there really is something to be afraid of. Today we will discuss with the Pleiadians just how real this threat is. They will answer these questions and clarify the essence of what is happening on Earth right now from their point of view. Prepare your questions that you would like to ask the Pleiadians. Because during today's broadcast, I have an assistant who will be off screen reading your questions and voicing them live. I will ask him to read them out louder so that they can be heard clearly. And in this way, we will clarify the answers to these questions. Overall, we are at a threshold stage of human development, and it is very important for us now to understand that on a galactic scale, humanity is currently considered a zero-level civilization in terms of intelligence. In other words, if we translate it into human terms, it is like being underage. And just like an underage child, the collective unconscious of all humanity is experiencing this adolescent period and everything that comes with it. This includes wars, various conflicts, rebellions, and confrontations, just like a teenager who is only beginning to form their personality and trying to understand their place in the world. They are in conflict, both with themselves and with the world around them. And accordingly, we as a species are now beginning to form ourselves as individuals, starting to experience inner conflicts. Now I will hand things over to the Pleiadians, and they will be able to give you some description of what is happening by answering your questions. A couple of minutes to set up. We welcome you, humanity. Right now, you are living through a truly pivotal and transformative stage in your lives, a period marked by significant change and uncertainty, when deep internal conflicts, such as struggles over values, identity, and direction are surfacing and becoming more visible at the level of individual nations, shaping the course of societies in profound ways. Karmically, this is a process that puts you as a species before a choice. How will you explore ways to establish communication? The most primitive and simple way of communication is attack, such as threats, and these often lead to military actions. Through this, you try to defend your interests. Each of your countries and states has its own interests, beliefs, and ideologies. And right now, the struggle is precisely over these beliefs and ideologies. You have lived and developed in a relatively peaceful time. Over the past 70 years, There have been very few wars on the planet, and this has provided a huge foundation for initiating the process of transforming the consciousness of the majority of humanity. But what has long been brewing, those internal conflicts that have been maturing within your humanity, must be resolved before you can unite in unity. The unification of peoples is one of the main tasks of any planet. In order to take the next step in evolution, the current stage on your planet is not something in any way abnormal or unexpected for us. We are not surprised that the situation on your globe is constantly changing. And we are not surprised by the emergence of new hotspots. Moreover, as we observe this, we increasingly understand that the faster you play these games, the sooner you will see and realize how deadly your weapons are and how foolish and pointless your wars are. The sooner there will be an awakening among the larger masses of people that this is not a way out of the situation. And no matter how loudly or intensely the shells explode in different places, and no matter how often it happens, in the end it still changes nothing at all. This does not change the main thing, the state of mind and spirit with which people do it, the place from which they start, the reasons why they are not aware of their own feelings and emotions. The evolutionary stage of your life right now is aimed at bringing the level of development of your rational mind together with the level of development of your emotional mind. Wars are born from a lack of awareness of one's own feelings and emotions, because it is precisely these that may be behind every conflict, and not at all claims to some territory. Or resources. In the past, wars were fought over territories and resources, because the survival and prosperity of states and peoples depended on them. But now, most nations and states already have everything they need. There are trade routes, air and sea connections. And if desired, diplomacy can establish any supply opportunities for various resources to any countries, if needed. That's why your wars today are completely different from those in the past. They are waged on the basis of beliefs, ideas, and ideals. This is usually the final stage, marking the end of the military period on planets of your type. We observe this closely. Of course, it pains us to watch how you treat each other, but we understand that these lessons, difficult and painful as they are ones you have chosen for yourselves as a species and are now experiencing. But that does not mean that nothing can be changed or that nothing can be influenced. Each of you is important, and each of you has an impact. Now, we are ready to answer some of your questions. So I will read questions from the chat.
The first question, how can we bring peace closer? Asks Natalia.
What is peace, really? Peace is a state. What kind of state? It is a state in which the value and importance of one's own individual self, one's boundaries and territories, and one's value systems are recognized without infringing upon other territories and value systems. It is recognized that you have the right to life, to your own thoughts, to your own ideas, and to your own freedom. It is also recognized that another person has the right to their own thoughts and freedom as well. If we transfer wars to the individual level for each of you, you are fighting with each other every day. And this arises not only from interpersonal conflicts, it also manifests as judgment and rejection of other people, ideas, ideals, and thoughts. When you judge someone's way of life, when you criticize someone's appearance, when you condemn someone's actions and believe that they are very wrong and should be different, at that moment you are emitting a wave of energy at the same frequency as all military conflicts. That is, each of you, and there are now a great many of you, billions of people, exerts an influence on the quantum field of the entire reality of the planet. And if you send more judgment, rejection, and criticism of each other into this field, then the sum of these vibrations accumulates and manifests as military conflicts. Rejection and conflicts that are born here individually in your heart give rise to collective conflicts. Therefore, eliminating the root cause must also come from within each individual. When an individual turns their attention inward and begins to love, value, and accept those around them more, they create a different vibrational frequency, the one you call peace. When you coexist calmly and peacefully with absolutely any opinions, ideas, and ideals around you, you are able to coexist peacefully in the world.
Thank you. Here's a question. How can you immediately respond with love and not react negatively in moments of aggression or irritation?
What does it mean to react negatively? Negative is what you yourself have defined as negative. Love is not a synonym for weakness or the ability to bend under someone else's aggression. After all, love is born from within yourself, and first and foremost as love for yourself. Love for yourself implies non-violence towards yourself, including not allowing violence against yourself from others. Therefore, reasonably standing up for your personal boundaries in moments of someone else's aggression is not negativity. Negativity only arises when you start to hate the person who is being aggressive, without realizing that the source of their aggression is their own lack of acceptance and understanding, as well as personal traumas. A person's painful personal traumas do not make them bad or evil. They are simply points where the person is unable to control their own aggression. That is why you have every right to defend your personal space without harming yourself, but also without showing aggression toward others. We can give an example from our own experience. There is a fleet within the Galactic Federation of Light. The fleet is military, providing security for the star systems of our Federation and for your planet as well. In moments of aggression from other races, we have to engage in battles with them. We understand and are aware that within each of those who engage in battle with us, there is also a divine soul. And when clashes occur, when there are attacks or crimes are stopped, the physical bodies of these beings perish along with their ships, and sometimes ours as well. But that does not give us the right to hate them. We do not start to hate them because of this. We love them and accept their choice. But first and foremost, we respect our own choice to live freely the way we want.
Thank you for your answer. Next question. Do secret space programs exist? If so, does that mean the Galactic Federation already recognizes us in space? Or is this happening in a parallel reality?
Secret space programs do exist, and this is not happening in a parallel reality. What you call secret space programs is different from what is being suggested to you in your information field. 90% of what is said about secret space programs in your information field is lies and fantasies. But in reality, secret contacts between the governments of countries and extraterrestrial civilizations are taking place, including between the GFS and many national leaders and governments. This is what we refer to as secret space programs. At present, humanity is still not ready for full disclosure of this information so that everyone would know about it. But we have made contact with your governments many times and continue to do so. In particular, this happens during times when conflicts flare up, such as what is occurring between Pakistan and India. We in turn establish contact with the governments of countries or with intermediaries who can deliver our message to the leaders of those countries with the aim of warning them against rash actions. Because in your world, your society, there exists a rather unprecedented and unique system of governance. A system which essentially implies that individuals, as well as a minority, rule over the collective majority often without their explicit personal consent. Thus, personal decisions made by certain specific individuals can have consequences for a huge number of people. We have directives that allow us to intervene in such cases to protect the many from the few. Since your civilization is under supervision as a young species and is not subject to self-destruction, by the decision of the Galactic Federation and the Galactic Council, you have been placed under guardianship, and we help you as much as we can within the laws available to us.
Thank you for your answer. What is the probability that all wars on Earth will end in the next 10 years? This question is from Margarita.
Probability is a characteristic that in 5D exists as a field. It is not localized to a single specific probability because it is as fluid as the ocean. What is the probability that the next wave coming towards you will be exactly 5 meters high? It is virtually impossible to calculate this probability since a great many factors influence this field. We cannot say what the probability is, but we can say that each of you can influence it. It is possible that within 10 years, all wars and all conflicts on your planet could end. But it is also possible that they could become even more active. Or it may happen that they will only continue to flare up. Which path you ultimately choose, we do not know. In this sense, we are only observing your collective choice.
Thank you for your answer. Next question. Dear Pleiadians, as the beings closest to us, could you tell us what steps would best unite people in advancing to higher quantum levels?
You already know these steps, and they consist first and foremost in understanding yourselves, your sources of desires, feelings, emotions, and sensations, dissolving the illusions of the ego which separates you from other people. After all, you see those around you as some kind of other individuals who have no connection to you. As soon as you delve into self-exploration and feel this interconnectedness, you will experience a profound sense of kinship and closeness with every soul on a deep level, and an understanding of each one from within as a unified part of God, with whom each of you is connected by some invisible and not yet fully clear bond. But if you learn to feel it, there will no longer be any barriers or boundaries between you. There will only be a sense of awareness, love, and understanding.
Thank you. Next question. Is it possible for a group of people, through their thoughts, to stop military actions on Earth? Let me add something. Apparently, the question is whether a single group is enough.
Yes, it is possible. It depends solely on which group of people, how many there are, and what connections they have to this process. Yes, it is possible to stop it, but the real issue is not about stopping it, but about dissolving the root cause of any war or conflict. It is impossible to simply change collective reality without understanding where its source comes from. Manipulating reality on a collective scale is quite a dangerous endeavor, because you can end up with the opposite effect. Every individual has their own free will, and when it comes to large masses of people, a great number of souls, each one of them becomes involved in this process and transmits their own impulse. So the question is, why did a small group decide that it has the right to determine the fate of another group? Hardly. We look at this as a field of vibrations. We perceive reality not as a struggle between fields and energies, nor as the influence of one specific group or entity upon another, not as a process of stopping, blocking, or shutting off some kind of wave state or energetic flow. Instead, we see it as active participation in a shared collective field of experience, where each individual contributes to and is shaped by the whole. Struggle begets more struggle. So if you try to stop something by fighting against the egregore of war itself, you will only end up sending energy to feed it. Rather, if you want to stop it, you need to do something entirely different, namely, generate the opposite energy. The energy that leads to peace. The energy of acceptance, awareness, and love, without judgment or criticism.
Thank you. So, next question. It's doubtful, but I'll read it. How does your assistance to the population show itself? Apparently, the Pleiadians specifically mean you.
We conduct daily monitoring of the entire planet and protect it from cosmic threats and dangers, since many extraterrestrial civilizations are interested in your planet, and for a long time it was open to visits. Everything changed when some civilizations wanted to take it over. They began to interact illegally through secret space programs with your governments, providing them with excessive technologies and resources that are far ahead of your time and your level of spirituality, with the aim of conquering and subjugating you in order to establish control over this system. But you are beings who exist in a kind of protected zone as a truly unique, extraordinary and remarkable species that was in fact specifically created with the purpose of uniting many races and types. And we absolutely cannot allow you to be destroyed or taken over by other civilizations that are interested in this planet and in you. Our involvement consists of protecting your planet from unknown threats and assisting it in the quantum transition. You do not know, do not see, and do not notice how many threats we repel every day. They come from space, through other realities and subtle planes, trying to break into this space. Every day we participate in a kind of energetic warfare around your planet, and sometimes prevent physical violations of the law. Just 30 years ago, there were semi-legal agreements and contracts that violated the principles of interaction with young civilizations. But representatives from other races, from Zeta Reticuli, would arrive and interact with humanity, abducting individuals to create hybrids. From our point of view, this was not only illegal, but it was also profoundly cruel. And furthermore, it ultimately led to the birth of beings that were never meant to exist, at least according to spiritual intentions, in our understanding. They tried to steal your DNA and forcibly take people, women, and children, which, according to our spiritual and ethical principles, as well as the laws of our galactic community, is considered a crime. And we put a stop to this. And there are still many threats around your planet that we repel and prevent every day. But we do not forget about the individual space of each of you. Now, billions of beings of light from the Pleiades and other star systems have come to Earth and incarnated physically into your bodies in order to walk among you as a kind of star landing party, radiating vibrations, sharing knowledge, and helping you in every possible way on this path of transition, invisibly present among you. You do not see this, do not hear it, do not notice it, but for some reason you think that we must and are obliged to come and solve all your problems. For many of you, our involvement is not enough, and you believe that we must and are obliged to stop all wars in an instant, and, with our lasers from flying saucers, destroy the negative governments on Earth. It doesn't work that way, because you create your own governments and you collectively create your wars with your thoughts. Even if we were to invade your planet and forcibly put an end to all conflicts and wars, open schools and forcibly change your government, it would not lead to you changing internally on an individual level. And you would begin fighting against us, perhaps even thinking for some reason that we wish you harm. So until you grow internally yourselves, until all these conflicts are resolved, we can only help you in this way.
Thank you for your answer. I'd like to ask a follow-up question based on your response. If you are able to incarnate on Earth as a reincarnation, are destructive extraterrestrials also able to do the same in order to constantly disrupt this balance?
Yes, they are able to. And it's not even so much about disrupting, nor is it exactly about incarnating. Destructive extraterrestrials, as you call them, are not only capable of this, but can also take over the consciousness of certain individuals who have been specifically prepared for this in advance, using what is known as the avatar program. This is similar to what you've seen in your movies, where an individual outside of Earth connects to their body as if it were a biorobot and controls it while being on Earth. Such individuals are encountered quite often, precisely because spiritual development in those races is not well developed. It's not like it is with us. They don't have abilities that allow them to easily remember their past lives and the mission for which their souls incarnated. That's why they have to come up with much more sophisticated methods to take control of human bodies. Nevertheless, this does exist, and sometimes they even infiltrate government organizations in order to secretly exert influence from within. Within the Galactic Federation, there is a committee called the Galactic Security Service, led by Ashtar Sheran. They monitor any such manifestations, and if they observe any excesses beyond acceptable minimums and balances, they have the authority to intervene and put a stop to such cases. Nevertheless, it is quite difficult to keep watch over all 8 billion people on Earth.
Thank you for your answer. So you have surely helped other civilizations to become enlightened and to end wars as well. Tell me, in this regard, aren't Earthlings more complicated beings? Maybe we have some kind of biological defect that prevents us from changing because, well, for at least 2000 years this has been going on. We keep having wars and they just never seem to stop. Do we have biological predispositions for this, or is it not about biology at all?
Wars on your planet have been going on not for 2000 years, but for about 20,000 years. Because you have had them for a very long time. And one of the oldest wars, 12,000 years ago, led to the destruction of life on several planets at once, including Venus and Mars. Your life did not originate on Earth, and your intelligent souls did not come here through Earth. It all began with Venus and Mars, and your ancestors lived there on Venus and Mars, creating societies and exploring themselves. Even back then, they became accustomed to living in conflict, in struggle, in battles. The beginning of this was when the divine masculine and feminine principles within you were split, when your men began to reject the feminine within themselves, and women to reject the masculine. Such a profound and deep split led to your society becoming sharply divided, especially within your community, between those who recognized one principle more and those who recognized the other more. And each of these principles dictated its own patterns of behavior and thinking. Thus, the more masculine principle dictated, to a greater extent, the path of reasoner path that implies ignoring feelings and emotions. Life in a blocked state, in constant anticipation of danger and aggression, in a state of readiness for any defense or attack. The Martians brought this state with them when they resettled on Earth after the Great Conflict. And the races that later formed Lemuria and Atlantis inherited this as well. But there is no genetically embedded warlike structure within you. All of this arises only from the immaturity of your mind, only from the use of your psyche, a use that lies in the unwillingness to accept yourself as a whole, to acknowledge your emotions and feelings, and to learn to understand them. Despite the fact that there are many wars and conflicts on your planet right now, we do not consider this to be a bad thing, and we do not believe that humanity is heading to hell because of it. On the contrary, we see this as a major breakthrough and a step forward. When conflicts smolder, when they sink deep inside and it seems like nothing is happening, that does not mean they do not exist. But when they surface and people actually witness battles, bloodshed, and the consequences brought by advanced technologies, after all, these are no longer just sword and axe fights, not just bows and arrows. These are rockets, bombs, and airplanes that bring massive, instantaneous destruction. And along with this, along with the pain of loss, with these destroyed cities and countries, comes an understanding of the value of life and the responsibility you bear when acquiring new technologies. If you do not feel this price, if you do not live through these conflicts and the pain they bring, it will be very dangerous for you to enter the Galactic Federation of Light, where the technologies are developed far, far beyond what you can imagine. What could an immature human mind do if it used our technologies? It's frightening to even think about. That is why what is happening now on Earth is ultimately for the benefit of your species as a whole, serving as a valuable lesson in understanding that the more powerful the weapon you use, the more technology you possess, the greater your responsibility to ensure that spiritual development keeps pace with technological advancement. Not just the accumulation of material values, but also the dissolution of pride as the ability to accept others.
Thank you for such a comprehensive answer. Next question. The climate on the planet has changed significantly, and natural disasters have intensified in all parts of the world. Does this mean that there is climate weaponry on the planet, and if so, is it being used?
You have attempted to develop climate weapons, but what you currently possess is far too weak and incapable of having any significant effect on a planetary scale. Many governments have worked on developing climate weapons, but these projects are not being used now because they turned out to be unprofitable, given that their impact is minimal and they cannot be controlled as easily as was expected. Right now, the climate on your planet is indeed changing, but not because of climate weapons. Overall, there has never been a period on your planet when no cataclysms occurred at all. Earthquakes, changes in water currents, and air masses are natural processes that occur on any planet, regardless of what is happening or how it is being influenced. Therefore, there have always been earthquakes and cataclysms on Earth, in the past as well. There are simply periods when there are more of them and periods when there are fewer. This does not mean that their number has increased, it's just that in the past you were unaware of them. Because technology and information transmission were not as advanced, you simply didn't find out that an earthquake had happened somewhere, since at best you exchanged news by carrier pigeon. But now you learn about it instantly, because you have the internet. So when you receive news from all over the planet, it creates the impression that there are more problems, disasters, and catastrophes. But in reality, this is only a seeming increase. Although, yes, overall the Earth's climate is indeed changing, but this is mostly due to the impact of human activity on the planet's entire biosphere. That is, your influence as a species increases as your technological structures grow and as your industrial progress reaches its peak, increasing emissions into the atmosphere, water, and soil. The burden on the surrounding environment rises, which inevitably leads to the redistribution of air and water masses. The climate on your planet really will change drastically in the near future because you have had a significant impact on Earth, and we would recommend that you reflect on this and stop emitting harmful substances into the atmosphere and limit the use of plastic, as well as take control of its recycling in order to prevent it from being released into the environment. Otherwise, you could do great harm to life on the planet as a whole and to your own health. Yes, this happened not only to you. For many races and civilizations, when industrial progress occurs at such scales and speeds, there is not enough time to realize what this leads to in the long term. And indeed, climate change is happening right now, primarily due to shifts in the direction of ocean currents. Since the overall temperature on Earth and the redistribution of air masses are changing, forests are also changing after all. You are cutting them down and not replanting them. So the places where more oxygen is produced and where moisture is retained are also changing. As a result, moisture is no longer retained in regions where there used to be forests and evaporates easily. And in places that were deserts, new settlement does not occur. The redistribution of air masses causes the warmth to hit the ocean unevenly and differently than before, which leads to ocean currents shifting along with the climate.
Thank you. As you know, the last Roman Pope recently passed away, according to the prophecy of Saint Archbishop Malachi. And according to the prophecy, after his death, there should be no new Pope, and the end of the world will come. How can you comment on this? And will it really happen this way?
No one knows how things will turn out. And any prophecies are nothing more than empty words, because essentially they are meant to program humanity rather than to predict the future. Because there is always a big question regarding those who deliver certain prophecies and for what purpose. After all, if we know that according to your faith, so shall it be unto you, then as soon as you believe in a certain sign of fate or a prophecy, it immediately begins to influence your life. But in this case, indeed, you are approaching the end of the old era. This is not the end of the world, as you call it, but the end of the old era and the old society. It is not the end of the world, but the end of darkness, the darkness of your consciousness, in which you have hidden yourself and your soul for many, many years. That is why we can say that this is not the end of the world, but the beginning of the light, which will occur when your entire society and social structure collapse, and you realize that there is no longer any point in pretending to be something, but that the only meaning is to deeply know yourself in order to emerge from this darkness into the light.
Thank you for your answer. Question about the pendulum. If we all suddenly uh, start to become enlightened, how does the law of the pendulum work in this case? Won't there be a backlash and everything suddenly become bad for us?
What you're talking about now is not the law of the pendulum. You have a certain misconception that if you create positive vibrations, then the universe must create resistance for you. That's not the case. This only happens in individual cases, when a person starts to oppose themselves to the surrounding world, entering into conflict with it. If you strive to fight against the world and the space around you, thinking that you are better than others, that you are the enlightened ones and other people are not, that you are doing the right thing to save humanity while others are evil, dark, or bad. In that case, yes, what you mentioned will happen, but not because you have become enlightened, rather because you are mired in pride, assigning yourself more importance than you actually have. In reality, true light requires neither recognition nor polarization. It is unrelated to the surrounding environment, and people who radiate such light attune themselves to it not to fight darkness, but simply to dissolve into this light and radiate it from within themselves like the sun. And then it happens that the sun, without fighting the darkness, simply disperses it, and the darkness simply retreats from it.
Thank you for your answer. So the next question. Well, I won't read about Slavs right now. That's not the topic. There was a question about the second coming of Jesus Christ, that according to it, darkness will also come. Is this from the same series as the one about the Pope, or is it?
There are different scenarios for the quantum transition of planet Earth. One of them is the scenario described in Revelation, where it says that utter hell will come, the earth will explode, split open, and so on. But this is an exaggeration by those contactees who received this information, since they could not understand all the events that might occur. Of course, if we take all the events and mix them together, it will create the impression that all of humanity has plunged into utter hell. After all, somewhere on Earth, rockets really are being launched into the sky, wars are being fought, explosions are happening. Somewhere else, the ground is splitting open, there are earthquakes. At the same time, there are major fires. And in other places, locusts are devouring fields and people are starving. Overall, there are many such events happening on Earth right now, and perhaps they are becoming a bit more frequent because people are interacting with nature unwisely. But of course, there are several possible scenarios for a quantum transition to occur. One of them is the near total self-destruction of humanity. If tomorrow all your leaders pressed the red buttons, then the next day a quantum transition would occur because there would be no other option of full-scale nuclear war. If that were to happen, more than 90% of the Earth's population would perish. At the same time, the remaining part of the population would undergo a quantum transition. This is one of the scenarios that can be described as a complete apocalypse, with the arrival of the Galactic Federation as a massive intervention in the process. And when such a miraculous resurrection of the planet occurs, when our ships arrive, equipped with technologies for reconstructing matter and reclamation, as well as for recreating structures based on Arcturian and Sirian technologies, there is a rapid restoration of the entire planet, its rebirth, the removal of sources of radiation, its cleansing from any pollution, and the coming of Jesus, The wonder person whom you call Jesus is Yeshua. He came to your planet and he is still alive now, existing in his body on another planet. His coming is the coming of the Galactic Federation because he is one of the highest representatives of the Galactic Federation. And of course, as he promised, he will return after the quantum transition. But the exact way in which the quantum transition will occur depends on you. It can also happen in another way, when the majority of humanity achieves their own inner spiritual growth and you become ready to accept other civilizations. Because you have accepted yourselves and have ended wars across the entire planet. If there is not a single war on your planet for at least 5 years, you will already be potentially ready for mass contact. And then our ships will descend from the heavens, and as your ancient text described, angels and gods descended from the heavens and came down in their ships of light. Essentially, this is a description of what we conveyed to them when we spoke about the process of the end of the old era and the beginning of a new age. And there too, the coming of Yeshua takes place as one of the main representatives who will help humanity restore a new state of spirituality and gain a foundation for the future development of the race.
Thank you for your answer. There was a question that a few years ago you said live on air that all wars should end in about a few years, 2 or 3 years. But today you are giving a forecast that there is a possibility it could take up to 10 years. So some people have doubts, why has this changed?
Each of you at every moment influences the future, every decision you make. That's why when you try to look into the future, it's like a quantum field constantly shifting and impossible for anyone to predetermine. When you go outside and check the weather forecast, you might take an umbrella with you because the forecast says there could be rain, variable cloudiness. You take an umbrella, but the sun comes out, so who's to blame? The forecast? The person who made the wrong prediction? Or was the forecast actually correct? Events like this can't be precise because they depend on a multitude of factors. When we make a forecast, we are only looking at the trends that are observable right now, but no one can know what is happening in the choices of 8 billion people at the same time. That's why when we observe you at every moment, we read a new forecast and see what has changed in the field right now. Because every moment now determines every moment in the future. Your future is non-linear, as it always is, because there are an enormous number of possible futures.
Thank you. Mikhail asks whether the preparation of 2 planets for the resettlement of people who will not move to the next level with Earth is still ongoing.
This preparation is already complete. Everything is ready.
So the planets are ready, but we still can't make the quantum transition in the necessary numbers.
Humanity as a whole has been given 100 years to make the quantum transition. These 100 years are the window of opportunity for this process, while you are within the current flow coming from the core of the galaxy. In any case, at any moment when the sun undergoes a pole shift, The renewing cycle that occurs every 11 years opens a window of opportunity for humanity to make this quantum transition. But exactly when this will happen depends on you. After all, the quantum transition is not a one-time process on an individual level. You transition, each person does so within themselves, and this depends first and foremost on your personal consciousness. The more people on Earth attune themselves to a state of unity with the 5D space and to the awareness of the non-linearity of the future, its multiplicity of possibilities and the ability to manage these possibilities, faster you approach this transition.
So the next question, can we ask you for help, and if so, how? To help us clean the earth after the end of military conflicts?
Yes, when they are over, we will help.
There was also another question. Can you help the dolphin race clean their habitat?
Only partially.
Why?
Because we do not have the right to interfere on a large scale in the biospheres of planets without the consent of the main intelligent species living there. All the consequences that result from the unconscious actions of humanity, including the extinction of species, are the responsibility of those people who allow this to happen. That is why, if we intervene and completely eliminate all the possible consequences, we will not allow you to go through the lessons, the painful and important lessons of realizing what your actions ultimately lead to.
Here's a question. According to the Pleiadian history of humanity, it is said that in ancient times, when we as a species lived on Mars and Earth had not yet been settled by humans, humanity constructed the Pyramid there, a truly massive installation, which was created for not very good or benevolent purposes. This significant and powerful energy surge generated by the pyramid attracted a race of destructive extraterrestrials who then came to Mars and invaded our space, forever altering the course of our history. So, is the likelihood of something like that happening on Earth now high? And would you intervene if something like that were to happen? There is nothing like that on Earth right now. There is nothing on Earth similar to those technologies. Well, what about nuclear weapons? That's not the pyramid we're talking about. The pyramid in question, the one on Mars, was created under different circumstances. The civilization was not attracted by the pyramid itself. They were the ones who built it on Mars. A warlike civilization from Lyra arrived on Mars to balance the energies when the Martians themselves attracted this civilization with their mental emissions. They established a significant and ongoing interaction that ultimately led to the transfer and sharing of advanced technologies, and they began the process of constructing this massive pyramid structure with the specific goal of stopping, or at least interrupting, the transmission of light codes through the sun, which originate from the center of the galaxy, in order to effectively cut off the solar system from the Pleiades star system, and instead reconnect it to another, different energy source. This is what ultimately led to the truly great and devastating cataclysm that occurred on Mars. There are no such technologies on Earth right now. So there's nothing to worry about here. An invasion from outside. As we mentioned earlier, the Galactic Federation is currently keeping the planet under blockade, and no spacecraft can pass without our permission. A military fleet is present in the planet's orbit and in the orbits of the satellites, and is also hidden in the Kuiper belt. Thank you. So there's a very strange question about chemtrails. People are saying that chemtrails are being sprayed and that many children have gotten whooping cough. These events are not connected. You are the ones linking them together, and you attract illnesses to yourselves because of your fears. The technology you mentioned does not exist on Earth. There is no such thing as chemtrails on Earth. No one is spraying them. Thank you for your answer. Otherwise, if what you're saying were actually true, then from the official perspective of the Galactic Federation, it would indeed be considered a clear violation of Directive 573, which explicitly prohibits causing mass harm to a large population by a minority group, and that would give us the right to intervene against such technologies and eliminate them. On your planet, there really were attempts to use such technologies, but their application turned out to be ineffective and was eliminated. Although negative civilizations did try to share nanotechnologies with certain representatives of negative organizations within your government's organizations that even the country leaders themselves knew little about. And indeed, they tested the very technologies you asked about. But when we discovered this, we put a stop to it. And now our probes patrol the planet's field, and if they detect any potential threats involving these nanoparticles, they eliminate them both physically and technologically, destroying those vessels. We have not recorded anything of the sort over the past 20 years, so you can sleep peacefully. Thank you. Here's a question. What is the forecast for the year 2025 regarding the 3 days of darkness on our planet? Thank you for your answer. Nina asked, some kind of 3 days of darkness?
No, because that's just fantasy, not real at all. Yuri had a separate extensive broadcast on this topic. If you're interested in a detailed answer to this question, watch that.
So, what can you say about the underground inhabitants of Schwabia? Schwabia? I don't know what that is, sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. The underground inhabitants of Schwabia.
They perished. They, the ones you refer to as Schwabia, or sometimes New Schwabia, was a project initiated by Nazi Germany, specifically aimed at saving the very top leadership and establishing a secret colony beneath the thick ice in Antarctica, where they reportedly discovered large underground cavities. But Antarctica is considered an international zone, and there are many extraterrestrial bases there. Earthlings are forbidden from approaching Antarctica, but Nazi Germany had agreements, contracts with representatives of the grey aliens from Zeta Reticuli, who supplied them with flying saucer technology, and they allocated them space to build their new Schwabia base. But it was never completed, its autonomy was never secured. At that time, there still weren't enough technologies to invent electricity generators capable of doing that. And when we discovered the contacts between the Zeta Reticuli representatives and Nazi Germany, we put an end to them, forbade them from interacting, and expelled the Zeta Reticuli representatives from their base. The remnants of New Swabia, namely the top leadership, first relocated there and lived there for several years. Later, together with Hitler, the top leadership left the base in New Swabia and moved to nearby territories, settling in South America. And the New Swabia base itself was abandoned. The people who remained there died due to a lack of energy and food shortages.
Thank you. Here's a question. Why are only 2 planets prepared for us? A very strange question. Why not 100 planets? Why only 2?
Because your race as a whole in general splits its personality into 2 categories of energy, a more masculine one and a more feminine one. Your masculine and feminine energies are uneven and unbalanced. One part of your society possesses a more aggressive and harsh masculine principle, while another part of society has a more aggressive feminine principle. And a third part of society is harmonious. The harmonious ones will remain on Earth. The more aggressive ones and those who express a more aggressive masculine principle will be sent to one planet, while those who express a more aggressive feminine principle will be sent to another planet. That is why there are three. One of them is Earth.
Thank you. There are a lot of questions in the chat about the idea that free will does not exist. For example, people write, why do the Illuminati and Freemasons say that there is no free will?
And why should they really say the opposite? What do the Illuminati and Freemasons want? They want only one thing: control, subjugation, and domination. What benefits them in order to put this plan into action? For each of you to give up your free will and believe that you don't have it. Does that answer your question, perhaps?
Well, logically, yes. The person who is asking this particular question should really take a moment to reflect on it and consider the answer for themselves, rather than relying on someone else to provide the solution. Sometimes thinking things through on your own can be very valuable. Let's move on to the next question now. Probably just a few more questions, and that's it. The very best one right now. So, what will happen to people who don't go through the quantum transition? Theoretically, this topic has been touched upon. But if you could briefly repeat it, we would appreciate it.
It would actually be much more useful for you to hear not what will happen to people who don't go through the quantum transition, because that question is driven by your fears. Ask yourself, why are you asking this question? What is driving you when you take an interest in this? Why didn't you ask the opposite question? What will happen to people who have gone through the quantum transition? Why are you asking what will happen to those who haven't? Probably because deep down you are afraid you might not make it, or you don't believe that your loved ones and relatives can accomplish this. And that means you don't really understand in principle what the quantum transition is or how to go through it. The thing is, the quantum transition isn't some kind of leap you can simply step over, like moving from one room to another or going from one floor to the next. Here, the process takes place deep within a person's own consciousness, like a flash of truth and clarity inside, an awareness of the non-linearity and non-locality of time and one's own consciousness. The transition is not like entering another space, but rather like opening a portal within yourself to harmony with your soul, like moving from the dictatorship of the mind based on illusory ideas about the world to a state of true harmony with your soul and higher self. That's it. And that's where the quantum transition happens as an inner revelation. So, what will happen to those who haven't made this transition? They will simply continue to believe that their reality is just the way it is. These are people who will be very afraid to believe that they are something more than just a piece of meat walking around filled with bones. It will be very difficult for them to accept that they have divine souls, and they will have every right to continue living out their experience on another planet, in another world that has not yet undergone this evolution. That is why they will be given the right to choose whether to stay on Earth and diligently prepare, learning from those who have already reached this level of consciousness, or to leave Earth by choosing another path that is easier for them, setting off for one of the two planets.
Thank you. A question of an urgent nature about a massive neutron star passing through our galaxy, supposedly posing a danger to Earth. Is this true?
Where exactly did you get this information, if you don't mind me asking?
I don't know. I'm just reading out this message from Galina. This information does not correspond to reality. There is a huge number of neutron stars in your galaxy, but even if just one neutron star from intergalactic space were flying toward your galaxy, by the time it reached your planet, so many millions of years would have passed that all life on Earth would have already ended due to the sun burning out, long before it ever got here. Because the distance from interstellar space to the galaxy itself is enormous. And even if your galaxy collides with the Andromeda galaxy, which will inevitably happen, it won't result in the destruction of all life. On the contrary, many new worlds and stars will emerge as a result of this merger. And many planets won't even notice it. Thank you. Here's an interesting question. Is it true that Mary Magdalene will be reincarnated in 2025? That's unexpected.
They say that you need to make a request to the spiritual world and to the soul of Mary Magdalene, to her individual being. What is the plan of her soul?
There is no answer about the soul yet.
They can't answer because they are too material. They say, we don't know. And you know what else they say? They say, we do not have the right to ask such questions or to answer them for the reason that the consent of the very soul in question is required.
So one more practical question in connection with the latest news. Recently, there was a power outage all over Spain. Do you happen to have any additional information about the situation? Is it possible that the government is actually hiding something important from us? Why did this happen? A sudden, unexpected drop in electricity, a massive collapse. What happened in Spain? Could it be related to a collider? Because there are questions about the huge collider. What information do you have? We would appreciate your answer.
And where is the Hadron Collider located?
Well, as far as I know, there is one in Europe.
But what does the Hadron Collider have to do with Spain at all? It's not powered by Spain.
I don't know, but theoretically, could there be one in Spain?
No, it's just that people are often afraid of technology, thinking that the Hadron Collider could create a black hole that would destroy humanity.
Yes, that's probably why the question came up.
Let's find out now.
If it's not related to the Hadron Collider, then I'm just curious where all the electricity in Spain suddenly disappeared to. Is this a threat to other countries, or even the whole planet, or not?
Yes, it is a threat. You should pay attention to the fact that the fragility of your electrical systems is excessively high. Now, due to the fact that the tension in space is increasing on your planet, the moment of the reversal of all magnetic fields is approaching, and solar flares are generating a huge amount of various magnetizations in the planet's spatial field. The case you described in Spain is not only of a technogenic nature but also an energetic one. The waves of the quantum transition generate not only the magnetization of electric fields but also the intersection of different layers of reality. When parallel layers of reality come into contact with each other, it's as if waves travel along the very fabric of interspatial connections, and these interspatial connections are sometimes disrupted, causing anomalous phenomena such as portals to other dimensions or intersections with higher order dimensions. Spain experienced a remarkable and significant moment in its history when a sudden and powerful surge of intersection with a parallel dimension unexpectedly occurred on its national territory. This extraordinary event had a profound impact on the electromagnetic fields of space in the affected region, causing notable disturbances and fluctuations. As a direct consequence, a series of unexpected quantum effects began to arise and manifest themselves in various electrical conductors and magnetic fields, leading to phenomena that had not been previously observed or anticipated by scientists, Quantum effects, such as superpositions of states in particular, fundamentally disrupted the principle of definite motion for macroscopic molecules. On the physical level, this phenomenon manifests as electrons gradually losing their directionality and the eventual loss of electrical networks, along with their ability to effectively conduct radiation. That is, magnetization is lost, but this happened locally in a specific area and lasted for about an hour. The area is roughly comparable to about 10 square kilometers. That's how the circle is drawn on the map. So they draw a circle like this. I don't know, it's some big city, but it's not the coast. Down here, that's the coast. And there are some cities. It seems to me that Valencia is over there. And so it's some big city, I'm not sure, maybe Madrid, maybe not, but about half of this large city falls within that circle, and at some moment the electricity goes out there. It's specifically in this zone, and the surrounding areas are slightly affected by this field, and it's as if they spread out in waves. I'm seeing waves now, waves, like when you throw a stone into water and there's a splash and waves ripple out from it. So there was a loss of power in one area. And then, like a cascade, it spread through the system of electrical conductors in waves, rolling out further and further, boom, 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 in waves. And this led to the backup systems, which were supposed to activate the power supply, being unable to do so and switching to restart mode. So only technologies related to internal generation were working, such as electric generators running on gasoline. But the main networks, the system shut down and it took time to reboot them. That's how it appears. Like an intersection with some kind of parallel dimension. What caused this switch? Is it somehow related to extraterrestrials? That's my question. We investigated this case, and yes, we found that it is connected to extraterrestrials, but these are not physical material extraterrestrials. These were the 12D dimensions, representatives who came into this field, into this space, and created magnetization there for a future extraterrestrial base. But you could have predicted that this would happen, right?
Did they have permission to do this?
No, they had permission. They had permission. They're telling me now that yes, we did predict that the probability of this event could occur during the magnetization of the areas, just that in order to create an extraterrestrial base in a certain territory, representatives from a parallel world need to come there and create energetic conditions similar to those of the species, that is, similar to another planet. They have to project a fragment of that planet while underground, where the base will be. And at that moment, there is a risk of such waves, especially when there is a solar flare, all sorts of such processes. So that risk did exist, and yes, it happened.
And that's why the Spanish government classified all of this.
They themselves don't know that this happened. That is, they have devices. The secret organizations have special devices capable of detecting such quantum disturbances. They recorded them, but they don't know what this data means.
There was also another important question about, is a mass physical contact possible during these 100 years while we have not yet made the quantum transition? And why, for example, are saucers, ships, and their presence often seen in Latin America, but say not on the Eurasian continent, Australia, well, let's say South America, What is the reason for this? Why is it so?
The number of physical contacts with Earthlings has decreased due to the development of your military technologies, military nature. Now, practically all countries in Asia and North America have technologies capable of detecting flying saucers and the disturbances they leave in the field. And some particularly militaristic countries have orders to open fire to destroy any alien ships. Such an order was issued after we gathered representatives from all your countries for a meeting and presented them with the fact that we are observing you, that we are ready for physical contact, that we are ready for mass contact, and that we are prepared to begin the process of revealing ourselves to humanity so that humanity can make a quantum leap. All of this was reported to the governments possessing the most advanced technologies. But contrary to our expectations, these governments perceived our proposal as a threat, as if we were threatening their existence and their way of life. In principle, this was to be expected, since your government is not exactly your governments in different countries, those possessing advanced technologies and nuclear weapons. First and foremost, think about preserving their own power and control over their populations rather than about everyone living in peace and harmony. That is why they rejected our proposal, which included conditions for nuclear disarmament. In other words, the condition for mass contact when we offered this to your governments was a complete renunciation of the use of nuclear weapons and the disposal of the corresponding nuclear warheads in all countries that possess them. Naturally, the countries with nuclear arms unanimously and firmly refused all of our help and support. Instead, after secretly consulting among themselves in private discussions, they made a unified decision to declare a regime of non-appearance for us in their airspace. In other words, the countries announced that they were closing their airspace to flying saucers and alien ships, issuing orders to their military to open fire to destroy any alien craft that entered their air defense zone. Accordingly, our appearance over these territories is now restricted and only possible if we have the appropriate air defense countermeasure systems, which can be installed on our ships, allowing them to evade or shift into another space at moments of threat. That is why we now rarely use the opportunity to descend into the area within reach. However, in South America, there are practically no military technologies, and many countries do not possess such military capabilities. And when we made contact with them, agreements were signed regarding contact and cooperation. That is why in these countries we have a large number of physical contactees, and sometimes collective physical contacts occur in certain zones where it is permitted.
Thank you. There are a lot of comments in the chat about Spain, about how the sky suddenly darkened. Many people wanted to hear your thoughts on this matter. They are very grateful. But if there is a risk of these energy portals appearing, how can we protect ourselves with our primitive technologies from all sorts of energetic entities that might manifest?
Recently, a friend of mine, Olya, actually told me that she used to work in an organization, in fact in Rostov, in an office that studies paranormal phenomena. And she told me about one inexplicable case there in Rostov, in Russia, when they arrived at an apartment and everything was covered in plastic, as if the people had just moved in and hadn't unpacked yet. The furniture, appliances, absolutely everything in the house was covered with plastic. They ask, "What is this? Why?" And the people there, already resigned to their fate, said, "Well, you see, there's nothing we can do. Water keeps pouring down on us." So they just say, "What do you mean water pours down?" Well, usually right here, they point to a spot that's where the water usually comes from. At any moment, without warning, water can just gush out, like from a fire hose, with a loud whoosh, and it floods the whole apartment. That's why everything there is covered with plastic sheeting, because you never know when it might happen.
Not from a pipe, just out of nowhere.
Not from a pipe. There are no pipes there. The ceiling is dry, the walls are dry, there's nothing there at all. And a team of researchers came there. They actually investigated with instruments, they checked the building plans. There are no pipes, nothing from where water could come. And one time when the researchers came with their equipment, they actually started recording that some electromagnetic fields were changing there, and the next room out of nowhere that sound appeared. So basically they all rushed into that room, ran in, and there was no one there. So you can say that it was the owners, secretly pouring something there. It's like the water was coming from just below the ceiling, but not exactly from the ceiling itself, more like as if it was pouring out of thin air. And so they came in, and at that moment, the water, like the last drops, just finished dripping, and there was nothing there. It was just dry. And then the special services from Moscow took over the case. They said, that's it, we're here, we'll take care of everything. They took all the documents, all the records, everything. So after that, no one knew anything else about this case. But in reality, what is this like? When other dimensions intersect, that is, now quantum physics and scientists are already talking about this, that our space is multidimensional. And for example, the intersection of different dimensions, different spaces, can produce phenomena that seem like miracles to us. It's as if it appears out of nowhere, but in reality, it's simply a place where our space suddenly intersected with another space, a parallel dimension. And from the parallel dimension, this water simply poured through. And there are also portals. People disappear without a trace because they just happened to be in a place where this portal suddenly appeared, and they stepped into that parallel dimension. It could be, for example, a portal to the past, or a portal to the future, or even a portal to another planet where Earth's civilization developed in a completely different way. So, for example, if you've seen the movie Tomorrowland, there was a way in which they would jump into a parallel version of Earth's existence, and there a parallel Earth was developing in another dimension as a possible version of the future. That is also possible, and sometimes these versions intersect, causing anomalous phenomena, because in our universe, there is no past, no future. All possible futures exist in parallel, as do all possible pasts, and they intertwine with each other like this. Sometimes they can even collide.
Is this somehow a threat to us or not?
You just always want to be afraid of something. It's so interesting to me. You just want to, oh, is this a threat to us? How can we protect ourselves from all of this? If I saw a portal, I'd be like, wow, a portal, hooray. And I'd probably jump right into it. I doubt I would feel any kind of fear. A clairvoyant woman once told me she loves walking through portals. She can clearly see them. And she says, one time I went for a walk and there were people grilling kebabs. So near the highway, there's a forest, and she was walking through this forest and people were grilling kebabs there. And she went into one portal by chance in the forest and came out all the time near this company that was grilling shashlik right from the portal, so pam. So it was as if she just appeared out of nowhere. And she says that by the 7th time I came out of that portal, they actually started crossing themselves like this. So, of course, anything is possible, and there's no need to be afraid of this. We live in a time when our superhuman abilities will begin to awaken, including the ability to travel between dimensions through portals, because for extraterrestrials this is easy. For example, on the far side of the moon, there are stargates. This is a kind of portal that was apparently created on purpose. In other words, in space, travel is carried out through a network of subspace tunnels, like a subway. In other words, there is something like a quantum subway in a parallel dimension that connects galaxies to each other, because traveling between galaxies is otherwise impossible. The distance is so vast that it's impossible to travel it using conventional spacecraft, because it's incredibly far, and it would be necessary to develop speeds faster than the speed of light. That's why there are subspace distortions in the form of tunnels that connect points, including within the galaxy. These were built by ancient civilizations that bend space itself, while the other races use them, well, sort of like renting them.
Where does it get its energy from? Needs energy?
It doesn't draw any energy. That is, the Stargate simply holds it in a kind of ring. They serve as a sort of point, which is marked in space in the form of a ring. But essentially, it's like a wormhole, an instantaneous Einstein-Rosen bridge. A wormhole that instantly connects two parts of space. And large spacecraft, in fact, often don't even have interstellar travel technology, they simply use portals. And these portals, like gateways, are present in every system. They travel through this network of portals. So not all spacecraft are capable of traveling between stars or star systems using only their own internal technology.
I see people are already telling you in the comments not to go into the portals, saying they wouldn't be able to live without you.
Friends, I would be very grateful if those of you who write that would also help share this video, because of course YouTube is going through tough times, and it's very important that you recommend the video to others, because if new videos that go live don't get enough views, then YouTube might even stop recommending the older videos. If you're interested in what I talk about, you can also subscribe to the Telegram channel where I go into more detail. Sometimes I record voice messages, I dictate them because I get certain insights and realizations in the flow. You can use this QR code to go to my Telegram channel or open the link in the description. Maybe you don't even have Telegram installed yet. Well, install it, it's about time. It's a platform that's currently the most reliable, and in the future it's only going to keep developing. So if you still don't have Telegram installed, go ahead and download it, start using it. For goodness sake, it's all there for you.
Today we touched on an interesting topic. Some people are already getting ready to move to Latin America.
Go for it. I'm all for it. I'm learning Spanish myself. Let's go. Why not? We'll live in South America. It's actually a really great place. I really like those places.
As far as I understand, there are no nuclear weapons there.
There are no nuclear weapons there, and there's practically no army. So basically, they're not warlike people. And Latin Americans, the people who live there in almost every country, whether it's Brazil or Argentina, as a rule, people with open hearts. That's important too. These are people who are less likely to block themselves off or pretend they speak Spanish or Portuguese. And these are, as a rule, very emotional languages that convey feelings and states of mind. People there aren't used to pretending. So if you go to, say, England or America, people there will say, "Oh, thank you," and smile. "How are you?" You know, that sort of thing. Yeah, right. As if they really care about how you're doing, you know? But in reality, most of the time, they couldn't care less about you. In fact, it could even be the opposite. They might actually find it really unpleasant to talk to you, but they'll never tell you that. So basically, they'll be hypocritical. But people living there in Latin America will most likely tell you directly if they don't like something, and they'll be completely open with you in conversation. In fact, it's the opposite. If they ask you how you're doing, they'll also ask, how's your mom, how's your grandmother, how's your aunt, and how are your kids doing? And that's completely normal.
Can you ask the Pleiadians which races are flying around in those sources?
All right. Yes, let's ask.
Are those the Pleiades, or is it someone else? There's also ancient civilization in Peru. There were pyramids in Mexico too. Is that somehow connected?
There really are ancient cities in Peru. It's not just the Pleiades that are present there. The Blue Avians are also very active in the region. In fact, the Blue Avians interacted with Peru as well as with the Maya civilization. They were called Quetzalcoatl. So these are like flying birds, the prototypes of those deities that existed there. The Pleiadians say that now the list of civilizations that have built their bases in South America is constantly expanding and growing. So overall, you could say that practically all representatives are present there. The most active in South America are the Pleiadians, Sirius, the Blue Ones, the Vianney. The Golden Pegasians recently built a base there. And overall, there are many other different representatives as well. For example, somewhere in Chile, there is even an Arcturian base, which is quite rare.
Why in Chile?
They created some kind of special energetic fields in the mountains there. So they needed right now, they're telling me that for the Arcturians, it's necessary to create very complex conditions, and there has to be a thick layer of mountain rock that isolates them from the outside world. In other words, they create a bubble of parallel realities precisely to prevent incidents like in Spain, where something could be dangerous for women and people. So it's dangerous for people to be near the Arcturian base, especially if they have phones or something like that, because for the Arcturians, our computer technologies and electricity create distortions in the field, and their own fields also create distortions in the field. That's why when Arcturians come to my retreats and we are meditating, we have speakers set up and music playing. The speakers stop working. In other words, the connection between them starts to get lost because Arcturians have appeared in the field. Any more questions?
Okay, more questions. Which civilizations are present in Russia?
Various ones. But many bases in Russia have been closed because it's quite difficult to get through the airspace. Many have been closed. Now, bases are opening in the north and in Siberia, but these are isolated bases. So I wouldn't say there are a lot of them.
So, about autonomous power sources, they mostly worked for people, right? So, as humanity, can we count on our own autonomous power sources in the event of such a threat of losing electricity? Or could it disappear as well?
No, in general, autonomous power won't disappear. Why not? Because solar flares of that scale are usually temporary and mainly affect complex electrical distribution systems with overloads. For example, substations have electrical distribution systems that redirect power flows. These systems burn out at such moments, and that's why it takes a long time to restore electricity, because you have to replace things, change fuses manually, basically repair everything. But if people have, for example, solar panels at home that fully meet the household's needs, then even if there's a power surge, maybe the breakers will trip, but you just reset them and that's it. And everything works for you.
So, our topic is really about how to guide us Earthlings onto the right path. What final words of advice can you give us, as if we were restless little children?
Well, look, friends, of course you're all worried. Naturally, when two nuclear powers start having conflicts with each other, people begin to feel fear, anxiety, and concern. But let me tell you this. We are under the reliable protection of higher powers, as the extraterrestrials have said. To sum it up, the Galactic Federation of Light. What is meant to happen will inevitably take place, and that's not a bad thing. We shouldn't view such conflicts as something extremely bad or terrible. Sometimes as people with a high level of awareness, and I consider you to be quite aware, since you're watching me, you understand that each individual develops as a psychological structure, and that the species as a whole also develops as a personality, as a psychological structure. And that means if we need to learn the hard way, then that's what will happen. And it all depends on how quickly the person in charge, for example, someone in a leadership position, is able to snap out of this oblivion and hit the brakes to realize, wait, stop, it's better not to go any further. Otherwise, this could lead to something bad. I can share my personal opinion, even though I'm not a forecaster, I'm not a prophet, and I could be wrong, but I want to tell you my personal view regarding what's happening between this India and Pakistan. It seems to me that there won't be any sort of nuclear apocalypse there, really. I think that all of this will die down soon because it's perfectly clear to them that they could destroy each other and neighboring countries. And other nations won't let them do that because China, also a nuclear power, is nearby. If there were any kind of nuclear exchanges between these countries, it would affect China, Japan, and all those Asian countries. It would cover them with this radioactive cloud. Or, for example, it could go in the other direction towards Saudi Arabia and all those Arab countries. So, in any case, their neighbors won't let them do this. And that includes America, because I heard some recent news that Trump called these countries and convinced them not to continue this conflict. That's why the conflict between Pakistan and India over the territory of Kashmir has been going on for a long time, since the 1940s, when they were divided, when the British Empire split them up back then. But in reality, it's much deeper than that. It's not so much a territorial conflict as it is a conflict between religions. And that's already a very big question. So what we need to learn now is how to transform religions. But what do I personally see? Personally, I see that the next generation of children who are growing up now will not be warlike at all. These are different souls who have developed under different circumstances. That's why now the remnants of these old conflicts are burning out, just smoldering. They may flare up somewhere or they may not. One way or another, we will get through all of this. Our planet will survive it all. We've been through wars. We've had nuclear wars on Earth. There are ancient cities that were incinerated by nuclear apocalypses. But it's okay, humanity survived and continues to live on, learning from its experiences and changing. So there's no need to give this too much importance. The very fact of your fear and the fact that you allow for the possibility of something terrible happening, nuclear explosions, I don't know, everyone dying, that in itself is actually a danger because it amplifies the probability of these things in the space around us. So if someone now says, oh my God, should we not go to India? Should we run away from India? You know, I actually wanted to joke with all of you and start the broadcast by saying, oh my God, buy canned food, dig bunkers, we're all heading who knows where. But I decided to spare your nerves, otherwise you'd get really scared. So I'll save that joke for later. So of course there's no need to dig bunkers or stock up on canned food. You won't need them anytime soon. And as for the future, we'll see. I'm joking, of course. Oh, and there's no need to cancel your trips to India either. So if you want to go to India, there's no need to worry. Maybe for a while you should just pay attention to your own feelings, and your intuition will definitely guide you along the best path for you. Because no one knows the future better than your own soul and where you need to be at any given moment. No one ends up in danger just like that, by accident. In other words, that just doesn't happen. Everything happens only by the will of the soul and by its personal choice. Rely on your heart, on your soul. Don't believe every bit of nonsense, scare stories, or predictions you see on the internet. The most dangerous and worst thing you can do for yourself and your life is to stop believing in yourself as the creator of your reality and start believing in predictions from all sorts of psychics who claim to have foreseen something, or some so-called great seer who has prophesied something, or maybe some supposedly powerful fortune teller has read something on the cards, or maybe you saw a headline like, "The most powerful astrologer predicts the last days of humanity." All of this is manipulation of consciousness. All of it is nonsense, scare tactics just for the sake of making money. Do you know why? Because this format, which has now become popular on the internet, the interview format, I myself sometimes go to interviews as well. If only you knew how much it costs to appear for an interview on such a channel. It costs a huge amount of money. For example, recently I paid almost 140,000 for a single interview. That is, they didn't pay me. And maybe you think that someone actually invites me to these interviews? No, you actually have to work to get there yourself, go to the interview and pay them money. And if it costs money, you can figure out for yourself and realize that people come to these interviews not because they're the most interesting or provide the most truthful information, but simply because they can afford to pay for it, which means the information presented here will reflect that as well. So it's not about who is the most interesting or tells the most truthful story, but simply about who paid and who was given airtime. Did you pay? Did they give you airtime? Then you can say whatever you want. After that, they'll just edit it however they want to make it look good, and that's it. So don't get your hopes up and think that everyone around you is only interested in helping you or telling you the truth. For the most part, people care more about attention, money, and views than about the actual benefit they bring you. So focus on yourself. I'm not speaking against anyone. I'm only speaking for you. Rely on your own intuition. Listen to yourself. Because value, after all, is truly in the eye of the beholder, not in what someone else is simply saying or claiming.
We forgot the most important thing.
Meditation.
No.
No? Give me the most important thing.
The most important thing. Fuel has just been added to the fire.
Fuel to the fire. Go ahead.
What does the earth look like? Is it spherical or flat? Why? Are there so many believers in a flat earth now?
You know, actually, right now quantum physicists are studying the theory of a holographic universe, of flat space, and it becomes clear where these ideas are coming from. Some channelers who communicate with beings from other dimensions, parallel dimensions, talk about the flat earth, and these beings have a completely different perception of space. And from their point of view, space can actually seem two-dimensional, like a sheet of paper. That is, for example, space might seem to some beings like a collection of sheets of paper, and they live on these sheets as two-dimensional little people within a plane. You see, for a two-dimensional person, it's impossible to understand what a third dimension means. It's clear to us because we can flip through the sheets, but they live in two dimensions. So to them, everything seems flat. But here on Earth, in our dimension, we exist in three-dimensional space, as well as in four-dimensional and higher dimensional spaces. That's why the Earth takes the shape of a sphere. Everything in the universe adopts this ideal form, no matter what it is. When you toss water in zero gravity, it takes the shape of a droplet, a sphere. And even if you drop a little bit of water onto any surface, it will take the shape of a hemisphere. And if the surface is repellent, like fur, for example, if you drop water on fur, it will form a sphere. That's it. You can't deceive reality. You can't deceive God. God designed it so that the most perfect shape is a sphere, because the surface area of a sphere is the most optimal. It's more optimal, for example, than the area of a square. Because the surface area of a square, or rather, the surface area of a cube on the outside will be greater than that of a sphere. So if you take a cube, cut it out of fabric, and try to wrap a sphere of the same radius as the cube, you'll end up with a lot of excess fabric, because the surface area of the cube is greater than that of the sphere, and the sphere's surface area is the most optimal. In other words, you can't come up with a more convenient shape in space that has the same radius but a smaller surface area than a sphere. So, in the universe, The most convenient and most ideal shape is the shape of a sphere. And atoms, molecules, everything in the universe strives toward this shape. An apple? Look, does it grow on a tree in the shape of a flat cake? A pear, a watermelon, do they grow as flat cakes? And your eyes? Are your eyes flat, perhaps? How do you know? After all, you've only seen them in the mirror. And what if the mirror is actually a project of secret forces? Maybe it's really a screen that's deceiving you? Well, you never know. Or maybe all ophthalmologists have conspired. And in reality, it's a terrible plot to deceive people. And in fact, their eyes are flat. Or maybe in the head, the brain is flat. Maybe it spins there like a disc, like a blank, compact disc. And in reality, we don't even have a brain. Maybe we just wound up mechanical beings. You can make up anything you want, any nonsense at all, and believe in it if you want to badly enough. And we will do a short meditation at the end of our broadcast, a planetary meditation. We will direct the energy of love, harmony, and peace into the space to increase the likelihood of the future we desire, one that reflects peace and well-being on Earth. Please find a comfortable position. Now I will choose some music. If it turns on for me.
Is there any guarantee that this broadcast will be preserved in its current form?
Of course, it will be preserved, not preserved.
You've revealed such secrets.
Well, I've revealed some big secrets. Please share this broadcast.
Must attend live broadcasts, not recordings.
Yes, it's important to be present for live broadcasts. Something might be missing from the recording, right? Sit comfortably now. Relax. Now I'll check all my settings. Close your eyes and tune in to your inner space right now. Call upon your divine energies. Allow your body in this moment to release any tension. Give yourself the opportunity to feel how a certain energy from the space around you fills you up. The energy of love, which is present in every cell of your body. Allow the light of presence from a subtle angelic realm to begin shining ever more brightly around you. And now you feel somewhere inside yourself how a warm energy of relaxation unfolds there and spreads throughout your entire body. You can literally feel it flooding you from within with a warm liquid stream of energy. Take a deep breath and feel yourself with it, letting go of any tension. Bring your hands together in front of you in a Namaste gesture and imagine a light emanating from your heart, filling the space between your palms. Send this light through your palms, filling the space between them. And call upon the energy of the higher light of the Pleiades from the source of unconditional love and ask them to be present in this moment, in this meditation. call upon the energy of the Absolute, the energy of peace. And now express your free will by repeating the words after me. I am presence. I am here and now. I acknowledge within myself the source of unconditional love. I sincerely thank the whole world and all the people on earth for the valuable lessons that are coming to all of humanity, for the contribution that each person makes to this world. I acknowledge the right of every person in this world, on this planet, to freedom of choice. I recognize that I am neither better nor worse than them, neither higher nor lower, neither more important nor insignificant. I acknowledge my own worth and importance in this world, and I recognize the worth and importance of every person on earth. Here and now, in this very moment, I open this space in my heart to receive the gentle, nurturing energy of God, love, and peace. Release your inner space and send a beam of light upward from the crown of your head and downward from your tailbone, connecting with the earth and with the cosmos. And feel how a stream of energy returns to you from the cosmos, from somewhere in the boundless expanse. The energy of the highest light, of the Absolute, of unconditional love. Now say this intention: I call upon the energy of peace, harmony, and love from the source of the highest Absolute and the Pleiades for all people on earth, for the swift awakening and realization of the value of life and the value of peace. Absorb this energy that is coming to you from the universe. The energy you have requested is now returning to you from this space, filling you through your heart, spreading into your body, the crown of your head, your legs, your arms, and beginning to flow throughout your body. Open your palms and move them a little apart from each other and feel a certain tension between them. Notice how the energy has begun to emanate, to radiate from your hands into the space around you. Now direct this energy toward the image of planet Earth. Imagine it as a sphere in front of you and send streams of energy toward it. Focus your intention and say to yourself, my dear Earth and all the people on it, in the spirit of the highest light, I bless you. I thank you and envelop you in this energy of unconditional love, so that the fastest possible restoration of peace and harmony on earth may be activated. And imagine how this energy envelops the entire globe. Help it along with your hands, sending it as streams of white and pink light. Wrap the entire earth in these energies, like a warm, soft blanket coming from infinity. Now send this light into the consciousness of all people living on earth, especially those who are living in conflict and war, as if you are sending them an airy kiss of love coming straight from your heart. Place your hands on your heart and recreate within yourself the feeling of joy and love in your heart. Remember a time when you loved someone deeply or felt immense joy about something. Recall within yourself that state of peace and love. And now, like a heartfelt, airy kiss, send it forward to those people who live without love, who need this energy, who need it to feel and realize the value of life, who are at war. Send it to them. Let them simply feel that someone cares about them and loves them. And may all sides of the conflict receive this equally, opening the light within yourself. Unfold it within every person and imagine rays of this light radiating from their hearts. Thank the space of light now. Bring your hands together in front of you in Namaste. Thank your soul and your heart. Thank the Pleiadians for their source of energy. Thank the Absolute and God. Thank yourself and your higher self. I sincerely thank all of you, each and every one who joined this broadcast, who took part in this meditation. Each of us has now contributed to the state of the world. Direct your attention to the center of the earth and ground yourself. Anchor these calm feelings of peace and tranquility into the space around you. Every broadcast is unpredictable, so when I lead them, I never make any kind of plan for myself, because I believe that whatever happens in the moment is exactly as it should be. However, the higher powers guide us. That's good. That's how it needs to be. I believe that we have answered all the most necessary and important questions in exactly the way that was needed. And I thank the representatives of the Galactic Federation for coming. Of course, I told you at the beginning that this channel is not political and I will not comment on any political issues. And naturally, many of you want to know, so what will happen? Will they use nuclear bombs? And when will it end? When will it begin? The forces of light do not provide such information because only the negative forces, those focused on predictive programming, give out that kind of information. Everything depends on us, and at every moment we are participating in the process of creating the future. Even this meditation we just did together has influenced and changed the future to some extent, perhaps even enough to prevent some more catastrophic events from happening. That's why you shouldn't see the world as just a linear sequence moving from the past to the future. Time doesn't exist in that context. It's impossible to predict the future, and those who claim they can predict it are more likely just programming you, and you end up making that future happen yourself. So the questions we answered are completely in line with the topic of this broadcast, with what is truly difficult and urgent, and with the fact that this decision was actually made by the Galactic Council regarding how to respond to it. And what the Pleiadians have just come and said is really very relevant, namely that it is normal for our civilization right now to be going through such transformations. So if someone feels they didn't get certain answers, watch the broadcast again more attentively. I'm sure you'll find those answers for yourself, maybe not the first time, but nevertheless, each answer can be very profound. Wisdom is not in the words of the speaker, but in the ears of the listener. And it's very important to realize for yourself that only you can hear wisdom. It's not in the words of the one who speaks, but in your ability to hear and recognize it. You understand, right? So I thank all of you for this broadcast. Thank you to everyone who joined, and thanks to my assistant for reading out your questions today and actively helping.
Comments are already coming in for me.
Yes, comments are already flying his way. Yes.
That I ignore all the questions about solar flares.
You know, I think that's a success because I suggest bringing all the questions about solar flares to the next broadcast, which will be with Ra. I have contact with representatives of Ra and the solar civilization. This is the very same Ra who communicated with the ancient Egyptians. Next week we will have a channeling session with him. So come join us. We'll be actively discussing the civilizations of the sun, solar flares, and the energies they bring. And we'll do a meditation together with Ra to connect to the energies of the sun and to open up the flow of this energy for the planet and for you personally. If you want, set a reminder so you don't forget about this broadcast. Be sure to come and take part in it. Thank you all. And that's all I have for today. Yes. One more small note. If anyone wants to sign up for the course The Power of Reality Management, registration will be open until Monday. You can still jump on board at the last minute by paying for 2 weeks at once, for the past week and the upcoming one. And you will already have access to the materials from both weeks. So this is your last chance. If anyone still wants to jump on at the last moment, welcome. I'm always glad to have you.